Gene Kelly's hands were destroying everything he touched. The coffee cup slipped from his trembling fingers and shattered on the Beverly Hills hardwood floor. The same hands that had once caught Rita Hayworth mid-spin were now betraying him with every simple task. At 82, Hollywood's greatest dancer couldn't even hold his morning coffee without humiliation. But that was before he saw the 8-year-old girl dancing on his sidewalk. What happened next would force Kelly to confront a truth he had been running from for 2 years. That maybe losing his body didn't mean losing his soul. The child outside was butchering every principle of movement Kelly had spent 7 decades perfecting. Her arms flailed wildly. Her feet stumbled over imaginary rhythms. Her timing was catastrophically wrong. Any dance instructor would have stopped her immediately. Kelly couldn't look away. There was something in her chaotic joy that reminded him of a feeling he thought was dead forever. But before he could understand what he was witnessing, the girl would make a discovery that would shatter everything Kelly believed about his own identity. The diagnosis had arrived like a death sentence in 1992. Parkinson's disease. Dr. Martinez had said, as if those 2 words could summarize the end of everything Kelly had ever been. The progression varies, but for someone whose livelihood depends on precise motor control, Kelly had stopped listening. He already knew what Parkinson's meant for a dancer. The tremors started in his left hand, barely noticeable at first. Then came the muscle rigidity, the loss of balance, the cruel irony of a disease that specifically attacked everything that had made Gene Kelly legendary. Within months, the man who had defied gravity and singing in the rain couldn't trust his own body to cross a room safely. The retirement wasn't voluntary. It was surrender. For 2 years, Kelly had been dying slowly in his Beverly Hills living room, watching old films of himself and wondering if he was already a ghost. His wife Patricia tried to maintain optimism, but Kelly saw the truth in her eyes. The man she had married was disappearing, one tremor at a time. But the girl on his sidewalk didn't know any of this. She was lost in her own world of movement, completely unaware that she was being watched by someone who understood exactly what she was trying to achieve. Kelly had been observing her for 20 minutes when she did something that stopped his breath entirely. She stumbled, caught herself, and instead of being embarrassed, she incorporated the near fall into her routine. She turned a mistake into choreography, found beauty in imperfection, made failure look intentional. It was the most sophisticated piece of improvisation Kelly had seen in decades. "Who is that child?" he whispered. Not realizing he had spoken aloud, Patricia appeared beside him at the window. "I think she lives 3 houses down." "Why? Should I ask her to move along?" Kelly's response would surprise them both. "No," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "I want to meet her." What Kelly didn't know was that this decision would lead to the most important 3 hours of his entire career, and that everything he thought he understood about dancing was about to change forever. The girl noticed him immediately when he stepped onto his front porch. Instead of running away or being starstruck, she waved cheerfully and called out, "Hi, mister. Do you like dancing?" Kelly paused. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that you used to be dancing? That you used to define dancing? That dancing used to be the only language you spoke fluently? "I used to," he said carefully. The girl tilted her head, studying him with the direct curiosity that only children possess. "What happened? Did you forget how?" The question hit Kelly like a physical blow. Had he forgotten how? Or had he just convinced himself that dancing without perfection wasn't dancing at all? "I got sick," Kelly said. "My body doesn't work the way it used to." The girl considered this information with surprising seriousness. Then she asked the question that would change everything. "But does your heart still know how to dance?" Kelly stared at her. In 2 years of medical consultations, physical therapy sessions, and well-meaning conversations with friends, no one had ever asked him that question. Before he could answer, the girl made a decision that would alter both their lives. "I am Emma," she said, walking up his driveway without invitation. "I am practicing for my school talent show, but I don't really know what I am doing. Could you help me?" Kelly looked at his trembling hands, then at Emma's expectant face. Every logical part of his mind said this was impossible. How could someone who couldn't control his own movements teach someone else to dance? But something deeper than logic was stirring. I don't know if I can, Kelly said honestly. Emma smiled with the confidence that only children possess. We won't know until we try. That simple statement contained more wisdom about creative risk than Kelly had encountered in 60 years of professional dance. But he was about to discover that Emma's wisdom was just beginning. 20 minutes later, Kelly found himself attempting something he hadn't done since his diagnosis: teaching dance. Emma sat cross-legged on his living room carpet, while Kelly tried to demonstrate basic positions from his chair, his hands shaking with every gesture. The secret isn't about moving perfectly, Kelly heard himself saying, surprised by the strength in his own voice. It is about moving truthfully. Emma nodded solemnly. But how do I know if I am moving truthfully? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Kelly realized that Emma was asking him to articulate something he had spent his entire career feeling rather than understanding. Close your eyes, he said. Think about the happiest moment you can remember. Emma's face brightened as she closed her eyes. Now move the way that happiness feels. What happened next would remain burned in Kelly's memory forever. Emma began to dance with a grace that had nothing to do with technique and everything to do with authentic emotion. Her arms rose and fell like waves responding to invisible tides. Her feet found rhythms that existed nowhere except in her heart. For 30 seconds, Kelly watched a child access the pure essence of movement, the thing he had been chasing his entire career without ever quite capturing it. When Emma opened her eyes, Kelly was crying. Was that wrong? She asked, concerned. Kelly shook his head, unable to speak. Emma had just shown him something he had never learned in 7 decades of dance, that the most perfect movement came not from controlling the body, but from trusting it completely. But Emma wasn't finished teaching him. What she said next would redefine everything Kelly thought he knew about his own identity. Mr. Kelly, she said, why are your hands shaking? Kelly had been dreading this question, but Emma asked it with such innocent directness that he found himself answering honestly. I have a disease that makes my body not work the way I want it to. I used to be a dancer, but now I can't dance anymore. Emma studied his trembling hands with scientific curiosity. Then she did something that nearly broke Kelly's heart. She took his shaking hands in her small, steady ones. Maybe you are wrong, she said quietly. Maybe you are still dancing. Maybe you are just dancing in a different way. Kelly stared at this 8-year-old girl who had just challenged the fundamental assumption that had been destroying him for 2 years. What do you mean? He whispered. Emma's answer would change not just the afternoon, but the rest of Kelly's life. Your hands are shaking, but they are shaking in rhythm, like they are keeping time for music only you can hear. She paused, her young face serious with concentration. Maybe that is your dance now. Maybe you are supposed to teach me how to hear that music too. The room fell silent except for the sound of Kelly's irregular breathing and the distant hum of Beverly Hills traffic. Emma had identified something that months of medical consultations had missed, that his Parkinson's tremor wasn't random. It had its own rhythm, its own pattern, its own strange and broken beauty. For the first time since his diagnosis, Kelly began to wonder if his body hadn't betrayed him, if it had simply found a new language he hadn't learned to speak yet. Emma, he said slowly, would you like me to teach you how to dance with shaking hands? Her face lit up. Yes. What followed was the most unconventional dance lesson in the history of American entertainment. Kelly developed techniques he had never imagined, teaching rhythm by having Emma match the irregular beat of his tremor, showing her how to find music in imperfection, proving that the most important choreography happened in the heart before it ever reached the limbs. Emma, meanwhile, became Kelly's bridge back to joy. Her complete lack of self-consciousness reminded him why he had fallen in love with movement in the first place. Her willingness to fail, to look foolish, to try again without embarrassment, restored his faith in the pure pleasure of dancing. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Kelly realized that something fundamental had shifted. For 2 years, he had defined himself by what he could no longer do. But Emma had shown him that there were other ways to move, other ways to teach, other ways to honor the gift that had defined his entire life. Will you help me practice for my talent show?" Emma asked as shadows began to lengthen across the living room. Kelly looked at his trembling hands, then at Emma's bright, trusting face. For the first time in 2 years, he felt like a dancer again.
"Yes," he said.
"I think I will." Over the next 3 weeks, Emma came to Kelly's house every afternoon after school. What began as help with a talent show routine evolved into something neither had expected, a genuine mentorship that transformed both teacher and student in ways that would ripple through both their lives forever. The day of Emma's talent show, Kelly did something he hadn't done in over 2 years. He left his house to watch someone else perform. Patricia drove him to Emma's elementary school, where he sat in the back row of the auditorium, surrounded by parents and siblings who had no idea they were sharing space with one of the greatest dancers in cinema history. When Emma took the stage, Kelly held his breath. She didn't perform the routine they had practiced. Instead, she began with the exercise Kelly had taught her that first afternoon, eyes closed, moving the way happiness felt. But then she opened her eyes, found Kelly in the audience, and began to dance the story of their 3 weeks together. She danced the trembling of uncertain hands, finding strength in teaching. She danced the discovery that movement could happen in stillness, that rhythm could exist in irregularity. It wasn't technically perfect. Emma's feet still occasionally stumbled, but she danced with such authentic connection to her emotions, such genuine joy in the act of sharing her story, that the entire auditorium was mesmerized. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. But Emma wasn't looking at the crowd. She was looking at Kelly, whose trembling hands were clapping as steadily as his condition allowed, whose face carried an expression of pride and recognition that transcended any award or accolade he had ever received. After the show, Emma ran to Kelly with her small plastic trophy clutched in both hands. "We won," she announced breathlessly. Kelly smiled, his eyes bright with tears. He didn't bother to hide. "You won. I just helped." Emma shook her head firmly. "We both won. You taught me that dancing is bigger than just moving your body perfectly." That night, for the first time since his diagnosis, Gene Kelly went to bed feeling like a dancer, not because his symptoms had improved, but because he had remembered that dancing wasn't just something he did, it was something he could give to others. Something that could exist in the space between two people sharing music only they could hear. Emma continued visiting Kelly throughout the spring and summer of 1994. Their lessons became less formal, but more profound, evolving into conversations about art and life, about finding beauty in limitation, about the ways that obstacles could become doorways to new forms of expression. When Emma's family moved to Seattle in the fall, she left Kelly with a handmade card that read, "Thank you for teaching me that the best dancing happens when you help someone else learn how to fly." Kelly kept that card on his desk until his death 2 years later. Whenever the Parkinson's made him feel useless, whenever depression told him he was a former dancer rather than a continuing one, he would read Emma's words and remember the afternoon that gave him back his identity. The last dance Gene Kelly taught was never recorded, never preserved for film historians or dance students, but it lived on in Emma's continued love of movement, in her understanding that grace could emerge from imperfection, in her recognition that the most beautiful choreography often happened when one person helped another discover their own rhythm. Years later, when Emma became a dance teacher in Seattle, she began each new class the same way Kelly had begun their first lesson, by asking students to close their eyes, think of their happiest moment, and move the way that joy felt. She never told her students where she learned this technique, but sometimes, when a particularly shy or struggling dancer suddenly found their confidence, suddenly connected with their own authentic movement, Emma would whisper a quiet thank you to the trembling hands that had taught her dancing's most important secret. The secret wasn't about perfection. It wasn't about technique. It wasn't even about the body. The secret was about recognizing that everyone, regardless of age, ability, or circumstance, had music inside them waiting to be shared. And sometimes, the most profound dancing happened when one person helped another discover what their own music sounded like. In the end, that may have been Gene Kelly's greatest choreography, not the steps he performed on screen, but the confidence he passed on to a child. Not the dances he created for millions of viewers, but the permission he gave one small girl to trust her own movement. The last dance Gene Kelly taught became the first of countless others, rippling outward through Emma's students and their students, carrying with it the understanding that dancing was less about what your body could do and more about what your heart was brave enough to share. That, perhaps, was the most revolutionary movement of all. The dance. It existed not in performance, but in the passing of one dancing soul to another. The rhythm that connected every trembling hand to every steady one. The recognition that the music never really stopped playing. It just found new dancers to carry it forward.